Okay. Can everybody hear me? I'm assuming, can people online also hear me? I mean, I know you can hear me.
Hey.
Yeah, I just want to make sure they can hear. Lauren is running just a smidge late, and Lauren is going to run the second half of this meeting today because I have to step out for an unexpected meeting that I got scheduled in. So apologies, everybody. But we've got a great meeting. Welcome, Connor. Share around here. Okay.
There's a show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And for those that are online, I understand there's roughly 30 people online. It looks like we have a little bit of light attendance physically here, but we have a good attendance overall. So I am the co-chair.
If you could please mute yourself during the meeting unless you're speaking. Thank you.
Please mute everybody online. Thank you. So I'm co-chair of the California Sober Living and Recovery Task Force, and I'm also the Mayor Pro Tem of Mission Viejo, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's meeting, both in person as well as virtually. So thank you for coming. So I just want to say thanks for your continued commitment as we work to address resident concerns around sober living and recovery homes, while also ensuring quality treatment for those that are battling the addictions and going to these homes hoping for treatment. This meeting is public and it is streamed live to residents, press, and it is recorded. And it will be made available on our website, www.soberlivingtaskforce.com. Lots of information there. I went to a town hall and I must have said the name of our website so many times because people ask questions. I said, it is on the website. So today we have a very important speaker joining us, and as you listen to her story, we will discuss future task force initiatives. I ask that you think about it in light of recent comments made by the Senate Health Committee Chair Carolyn Menjivar. Did I say that correctly? It looks like it probably is. Regarding the removal of AB 492 from the consent calendar, despite the bill receiving no opposition or no votes. During this hearing, the chair, I'm seeing nodding from our League of Cities. Thank you, Connor, for confirming. During that hearing, the chair specifically singled out Orange County legislatures for introducing many bills on this topic, which have led to what she is saying, bullying and harassment of the facilities. Just keep that in mind. For context, AB 492 was merely a disclosure bill that would have simply required DHCS to notify cities when new facilities are approved within their jurisdiction. That's it. The statements from the chair, while disappointing, should not be sugar-coated. This will help inform our discussion today and our consideration of future strategic initiatives. So I did not sugarcoat that. I gave it to you exactly as it happened. So for a CAFLAR update really quick, I'd like to just have Chris Murray from the Association of California Cities Orange County to briefly share the latest on the task force transition to nonprofit status. And we thank you, Chris.
Excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem, may I ask you a question, please? What the board on AB 492, who is the chair that mentioned, I want to get it in my notes, who is the chair that mentioned that?
It is Caroline Menjivar, MENJIVAR.
She represents Burbank and San Bernardino, that area.
There you go.
And that committee was that, what was that, health and, I believe
She's the chair of the
Senate Health Committee.
Senate Health Committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for wanting to get those details. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. Chris Murray with ACCSC, and it's my pleasure to give an update on the development of our task force as a full-fledged nonprofit 501c3. Our state filings are complete, and I really want to acknowledge and thank the City of Mission Viejo for organizing the task force from the very beginning, and also the leadership that you provided, as well as Bill Curley, that's the attorney who did the filing for the task force to get us established as a 501c3. There's interest from a lot of our jurisdictions to participate in that. We're getting the initial meeting set of that nonprofit board, which will meet a minimum of once a year to determine budgetarian, approve strategic initiatives, but the work of the statewide task force will happen here with all of our community partners. So that'll all be happening within the next few weeks, the initial board meeting to set up a budget, to set up things like getting our bank account open and all of those logistics. And then also the discussion that comes out of today's meeting on the strategic side will be reported to that board, and they'll have some ability to weigh in and provide input as well. So we're looking forward to hearing from our guest speaker in particular, somebody who's really been through it, and also just the open dialogue from everyone participating today on our strategic work.
Terrific, thank you. So I just want to remind everybody, in case you didn't hear me, I do need to leave at about 2:25 for a meeting that I couldn't reschedule. And Lauren, who is functioning in a somewhat of a co-chair position, is going to take over the meeting. So, and she's on the legislative, she heads up the legislative task, ad hoc of this task force. So she's actually the perfect person to take over right about then. So with that said, thank you so much, Chris, and thank you, Chris, for the things you're doing for all of Orange County. We appreciate everything that you're doing because you are stepping in and being a real force for the county, and we thank you. And you've got such great knowledge base for it. Perfect people at perfect time. It's perfect. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm pleased to introduce our special guest speaker, Sequoia Marie Thiessen, who will share her lived experience with addiction treatment. This is a critically important perspective that we cannot lose sight of as we consider and pursue various reforms. So Sequoia, we met you, you came to our press conference, and I just want to thank you for your courage to share your story and for being with us today. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here. I've watched a lot of the meetings prior, so it feels really, really amazing to be here and contribute like my thoughts. So let me go ahead and share my screen really quickly. If I can have let me see. I'll send a request.
You have to allow it. You have to allow her to share. Okay, you got it? Good. Okay, we're getting it squared away.
Okay, perfect.
492 passed out of Health 6-0 and is headed to the Senate floor. This just in from Carolyn Grinder.
Yes.
Did I
Yeah.
not have the right info on
Sorry to
that?
interrupt.
So we'll get to it later.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It was like,
Oh,
it was like
no, you're fine.
It flashed up on the screen.
You're totally fine. So my name is Sequoia Thiessen, and today I'll be sharing my perspective on what I believe to be true justice, which I believe is like restorative, right? Like if we're thinking of a sober living and recovery task force, there should be just as much effort placed to trying to catch the bad guys just as much as like giving people other alternatives is exactly what I'm going to say, right? Essentially. So this is some things we'll cover. I'm going to try to do this in a timely manner, but I have a lot to go over because like I said, I've watched a lot of the meetings and I have so much to say. So yeah. So first we're going to talk about my story. We're going to talk about the key elements of patient brokering, and how I believe that it's directly associated with human trafficking. We're going to break down some of those harms that I discussed in my congressional testimony. I'm going to give some of my survivor critiques of things that I've heard, that I think that we could reframe or possibly just like think of in a new way. I'm going to share some limited data on brokering that I have seen. And then I'm going to also share a preliminary study that I've been working on, and some of the results from that, which I think that some of the people might be pretty shocked with that. I'm also going to be sharing a video that I think many people will be shocked by. I'm also going to be discussing some of the research barriers and why I think that it's really important to do research in these areas, especially like if we can't measure the harm that's being done, it's going to be really hard to get prosecutions. It's going to be really hard to educate people on, why we should even avoid these places to begin with. And then I'm going to discuss some real solutions. So this is me as a child. I was born in Montana, in what we call Indian country. And it's typical, in these rural areas in Montana for children to use drugs at a pretty young age, like probably like when you're entering teenagedom. That was something that I struggled with. I had a very abusive father, whatever, right? Later in life, I became a teacher and a child development expert. And this is one of the reasons that I put a photo of me as a child, because I was really interested in the relationship between the things that happened to you as a child and the choices that you decide to make as an adult, and also the behaviors that you exhibit and develop. And I developed during this time, a high functioning opiate and cocaine addiction. I was also a severe workaholic. I still am. I love to work. But during that time, I was trying to cope with so many things that were going on in my life that I just didn't really have control over. I was really a big fan of living in Montana, etc. So I came to California for treatment in summer 2022. I resigned from my teaching job, and I flew out here. I think it was about July. And no one paid for my flight. I actually technically went to what we would call a legitimate treatment center. And I'm going to discuss some of the problems with what we would call legitimate treatment centers as well later on. So I resigned from teaching after 4 years to become clean from opiates and get mental health treatment. By fall 2022, around October, I had already been bounced around to 5+ facilities. And I was subjected to a sexual assault, and I was also 5250'd due to a over medication incident that really, looking back, was not really my fault. But it very much contributed to the SA because it put me in a very vulnerable state. So in December and January, I entered Pablo's like rehabs. I was lured in by the luxury housing after living in filth for months prior. And I'm going to talk about this later as well, but I was also drawn in by his harm reduction model, right? And I'm putting that in quotations because we all know what that means. Which was at the time really just for me smoking marijuana, because that's something that I've done for years. I've had a med card since I was 18. I have a non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. And so I've had doctors tell me in the past that it's not really healthy for me to take any kind of medication every day. I don't really need to take a medication every day. My mental health symptoms are very manageable. I have like anxiety, PTSD, very manageable things that I've coped with now over the years. But they were always trying to medicate me at these places with things like Suboxone, things like, what is the other one? Naloxone. They would always give everyone Narcan. And this is standard in pretty much every treatment, but they like to bring it in droves. Also, the Suboxone, I was never really a person who did Suboxone, but Suboxone is often shared in these homes because it's given to house managers. And so there was a situation at Pablo's where I had a house manager for about 5 or 6 months, and he ended up relapsing and being kicked out. And the way that this was handled was absolutely inappropriate. So many ways that we were put in danger, guns, so many different things, right? And so then once I'm illegally evicted from Pablo's, I end up at Revive Recovery, which is Ani's program, and she wastes about 2 to 3 months of me and my ex-partner's time telling her, and essentially my ex-partner was one of my brokers. And that is the reality for a lot of people, is that their broker is somebody very close to them. And to be very clear, she was also being brokered by many different people. Because that's kind of just how it works. It's kind of like a pyramid scheme. So she makes us wait about 2 to 3 months for her detox to open. I actually called the police while I was in her detox because I was assaulted physically. I had 2 black eyes. And the cops basically didn't really believe anything that I said. And this was kind of crazy to me because I've always been someone who's been a respected member of the community. So even like before I went to treatment. But as soon as you enter these places, you are essentially treated like the stigma really sets in. And that's why I'm here, is to kind of break that stigma a little bit and talk about the situations and the things that we have to navigate when we're trying to talk about these issues. So I want to do a little thought experiment really quickly. I've talked about this with some people. Just try to put yourself in the shoes of someone that's entering rehab. You've lost a lot of things, but most importantly, your relationships are very strained. The trust with your family is probably non-existent. And you're walking into a promise of hope, recovery, healing. And so when you're in that situation where your families no longer trust you, this is the exact dynamic that brokers like to exploit. Because if you think about someone who, okay, so for many of us, like coming out of state, like I said, there's going to be a huge gap there. So if a resident tells their parents something like, my house manager paid me to get high, or they're forcing me to relapse, I think it's pretty fair to recognize that that actually sounds like a load of BS. Like many parents would look at their child and say, are you kidding me? No one has to force you to do the drug that you've done willingly for the past X amount of years, right? It becomes a very unbelievable story. It also sounds kind of like a conspiracy theory. Oh, they're just trying to get my insurance money. And so these are some of the barriers that you have when communicating with the police as well, because they already see you as mentally ill. They already see you as possibly on drugs, because that's what the sober living is telling them. Even if you could be completely sober, they will tell the police that you're high. So those are kind of like some of the barriers that we're facing, right? And so by the end of the summer, I was trying to communicate some of these things with my mom. By the end of the summer, I've been to more rehabs than I can count. Displaced all summer, and one of Pablo's ex-employees actually opens up her own rehab, and she steals all of Pablo's clients, every single one of them. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen, probably something out of a movie or something. Honestly, it might be in the documentary, who knows. And she takes advantage of a lot of my exhaustion by this point with sober living homes, and she puts me in an apartment. In this apartment, she forces me to detox a client. Why did she force me to detox a client? Because she did not have a detox open at this time, right? So she is forcing me to detox this client because she wants to bill them. That's how deep this stuff gets. They will do almost anything when it comes down to just billing a patient as long as possible. This person was in no mental capacity. This person traumatized me. They were in no capacity to be in outpatient treatment. They should have been somewhere inpatient getting the proper care. This person was also transgender. So I believe they were kind of exploiting that as well. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but they really exploit these intersectional identities that people have. So you're an addict, but you're also Native American. you're an addict, but you're also a part of the Black community. You're an addict, but you're also gay. And they take advantage of those intersectional identities that are especially vulnerable, especially separated from the police and things like that. And in September 2024, I was able to finally escape after getting staples in my head and having a near-death experience at the hands of my broker, because I was telling her that I was not going to do treatment anymore. And we were basically fighting about that. And I was saying, like, I really wanted to get a place to live, like, legitimately. I had lived on my own for years. Living in these kind of environments was not pleasant at all. I'll go into that a little bit later. So in 2024, I went home for about 2 weeks. My mom helped me. She's a nurse. Like I said, she like kind of healed me up a little bit. And then I came back and I got a place and I immediately enrolled in college. And a lot of people are like, wow, that's crazy. You immediately enrolled in college. I was honestly this entire time desperate to go to college. And that is how I knew that something was very wrong, because why wouldn't a treatment center support you going and getting an education? Well, because they want to recycle you in some kind of way and they don't want you to gain that kind of autonomy. Especially not critical thinking skills that you would gain from going to a university. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my life now. Like I said, I started school in spring 2024 as a history student. I now focus on like post-colonial restorative justice research. Sorry, post-colonial restorative justice
Hi.
research.
Love you too.
With the city of
Yeah,
Santa
if you're on the
Monica.
call and you could please mute yourself if you're not a speaker, that would be great. Thank you.
I founded the first Native student org on campus in my first semester, which is now on track to become a center. I was appointed to Santa Monica's Land Back and Reparations Task Force, which is also a bipartisan issue task force where we're dealing with about 200, 300 years of history in Santa Monica regarding the indigenous communities and the Black communities that make up LA. So that's really amazing. I'm also an independent abolitionist researcher to publish in the Harvard Theological Review next year. And I only recently started doing patient advocacy. And I want to say that because of my abolitionist research, it's really inspired me to retouch this kind of stuff, because it is very hard to revisit. But I will say that the way that we do a lot of like the Land Back and Reparations Task Force is a bit different, but we go off a lot of data. We talk about basically we're drafting a 40-page harm report, and we are gonna use that to draft policy change in Santa Monica, hopefully get some land back, stuff like that, right? But I was especially inspired by people like Harriet Tubman, who used her freedom to go back and free others. And my plan is to become a lawyer and a politician. So here's where we're going to really get started, right? My story is really unique, but I want to change that. I really almost know nobody like me. People don't really escape treatment. They don't really escape body brokering. And I'm going to say treatment as well, because a lot of people are trapped in that cycle, and I'm going to go into that more. So this was as of 2020. The OC registered had said that 0 body brokering cases had been tried. I also saw this quote, and it says, obviously, we'd open an investigation. By the time we got to trial, some of the victims were already dead. I would argue that this is because aftercare is pretty much non-existent. People like Dave Ehrenberg, bless his heart, he thought that he was going to be able to put people in a tidy treatment home, and then they were just going to be fine. And he was going to be able to have access to them for the next 2 years as it took him to build a case. And that's just not true. It's just not how it works, because these people have no way out. The harm is not being measured, it's not being really studied properly, it's not being documented, and it's not being properly addressed, in my opinion. And we'll go into that in a second. So 1 in 4 victims will OD after leaving body brokering, and that's a really important aspect because it's genuinely proof that, you know, when you leave this kind of thing, this is something I'm going to argue later. How can you tell someone who's been a victim of body brokering that they need more treatment? That just doesn't make any sense, right? So again, as a post-colonial scholar, I can't help but point out this really interesting layer to it as well, right? We have the wheel of power. A lot of times, you guys, if you've studied American history, you've heard that phrase, guns, God, and greed. It was very central to colonialism, especially settler colonialism, and what Christian nationalists brought when they went west, right? The reason I bring this up is because, again, of the fact that they really target these intersectional identities, especially Native patients. And when you're targeting Native patients, you're doing that for a reason. You're doing that because their identity is especially vulnerable. So we're gonna go over kind of like why I believe that patient brokering is human trafficking, and also like why I feel like this is so important, because we can move past the kind of like regulatory conversations and we can have like more meaningful conversations about how we can help these people like truly, but also how we can punish these people adequately, because currently many of them get slaps on the wrist, they get fined, and I just think that the punishments and the penalties should be much harsher. So first of all, we'll do recruitment first. These places are no accidents. These are places where people are their most vulnerable, full stop. They're going to find help. They're going to seek community in some kind of way, or they're being forced to be there. So like the justice system. And this is why I'm somewhat critical of frameworks that kind of force people into jail or treatment, because even though it means well, a lot of times those kinds of people are targeted by these kinds of scams because of that intersectional identity that I mentioned earlier. And now transportation, right? Who is targeted? Like I said before, already vulnerable individuals, many uneducated, underemployed, lacking skills. Like I said, again, also lacking those strong family healthy connections. And they are transported all over the United States to California, but also to other hotspots like Arizona, Florida, I believe Pennsylvania, Michigan, Texas was really, I think, had a lot of them at one point, but they kind of cracked down. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about Arizona a little bit more. But this is a PBS article. Many of you may have seen it. Fake Arizona rehab centers scam Native Americans from across the country. So 38-year-old said the center brought her a one-line airline ticket, and this person was actually from my home state, which is Montana. Nelson said after a month, she was kicked out after questioning why there was one therapist for 30 people and no Native American staff, despite a focus on clients, Native clients. So 2 things I really want to point out here. One, just questioning these people can really get you in a lot of trouble. And so it fosters this really negative cult-like environment, where silence is pretty much expected, secrecy is expected, and it makes it hard to get through to these people while they're actually there, right? And then the other part, despite a focus on Native clients. So this is a recommendation I'll go into a little bit later, but the marketing is out of control. These people say all kinds of things just to get people in the door. And in pretty much every other industry, that's not really acceptable. I mean, we have a lot of marketing regulations, especially here in California. I mean, I just seen something the other day that said that ads had to be like the same volume as whatever you were watching. So I was just like, we just need to look at the marketing more on how they market, because that's what body brokers call themselves. They call themselves marketers. And they are not marketers in any sense of the word. Some of them have licenses as marketers, some of them have websites, some of them try to be as legit as possible. But if you actually comb through their stuff, you're going to find that it's not very professional looking. So people are brought by plane, bus, car. This van method was really popular with Oklahoma in particular. And they'll even Uber people. There's a sense of control with Uber, right? Especially if they Uber you. And so next we're going to talk about harboring and providing. This is probably one of the most important. So when we're talking about coercion and bribery, this is it. So cash payments are not the only way that clients are enticed, bribed, and manipulated. Treatment centers have realized that they can string clients along with promises of monetary gifts, shopping sprees, and even just providing basic necessities. So food is a really big one. There's a lot of, in the video I'm going to be showing you later, there's a lot of manipulation around food, which is really unfortunate. And then, like I said, basic necessities are often a bribing coin, a bargaining chip, because you're not allowed to work, and you're always kind of like you have no money, you know? It's typical for them to entice clients with luxury homes or even promises of moving to luxury homes. I remember there is programs who for months say, "Oh, we're gonna move to this house. Look at it, it's so nice." And they just string their clients along for months. They also make promises to get clients apartments, jobs, cars, all of the above, right? And so when we're talking about induction, it's actually like so much worse than I think people realize, because the forced relapse is, I think, what most people have the most knowledge on. And it also includes neglecting patients' medical care. So we have forced labor. I know that I'm on a time. Okay, perfect. So forced labor, brokers regularly recruit patients for free. And they make them do really time-consuming, emotionally distressing labor. Like I said, I had to detox clients on multiple occasions. I know people who have had to use their own cars to be drivers, move houses, maintenance work, etc. And then forced sex work is also very common. So brokers will demand sex from vulnerable individuals. They will also prey on sex workers and force people to do sex work if their insurance stops paying. This is kind of some of the stuff I talked about in my congressional testimony. Emotional and psychological manipulation. So it's so common that it's done pretty much in mass efforts. It goes unregulated and under-recognized most of the time, and unfortunately, a lot of the victims are not far enough along in their recovery to even identify this abuse, because they come from backgrounds, I know that I did, where emotional abuse is kind of common. And then, like I said, this is relevant to the video I will play. Many of these facilities operate similar to cults. Patients are expected to protect owners and house managers' feelings and walk on eggshells. And then sexual abuse and physical harm. Knowing that people cannot report to the authorities, untrained and poorly trained and overseen house managers and staff do take advantage of patients sexually, and that's pretty common. Goon squads will fuel cult-like environments by enacting or threatening violence, typically for favor with ownership for better treatment themselves. And then unsafe, unpleasant, grotesque environments, right? The houses are not upkept in a way that's safe. There's mold, there's rodents a lot of the times. They stack 6 to 8 people in one room. And the couple system often enables toxic and dangerous partnerships in the houses. And so I'm gonna show this video, but before I show it, I'm not gonna show the whole thing, but I'm gonna want to know people's thoughts at the end. So just for context, this was taken by a client while after a treatment center owner was posted in the It's Time for Ethics in Addiction Treatment group. I'm going to tell you something about It's Time for Ethics in Addiction Treatment. If Melissa tells you that someone is crooked, you need to listen to her because she's been doing this for a long time. And she is the reason that I actually stepped into advocacy because of how thorough she is. She could honestly be in the FBI herself. So that's what I'm going to say on that. The context you need, there's a bunch of clients sitting. They are being lectured for something that one person posted on the ethics page.
You guys are very disrespectful. A lot of you guys. I'm not talking to everybody. Some of you guys are awesome. I love you guys. I love every single one of you guys. At all. You guys want to rebel? You guys can leave. The door's open. The funny thing is, y'all still here. Y'all talk all that shit, but you're still here. So have some balls and walk out that door. Let me see who's gonna walk out that door. Prove me. So I want to see who's gonna walk out that door. So I'll tell you right now, I hear one thing one person says about me, about my staff. I don't care who it is. You're done. And you'll go to the other programs that don't provide food, that don't have the fucking amenities we have, that don't have the fucking housing we have.
You can see food being weaponized here, like I said.
I don't care for them, I don't care for you guys. The staff doesn't fucking go and show them get hard out to them. You guys fucking insurance left, I still fucking keep you guys. I let your fucking family come visit you on my expense. Or I don't let you visit your family on my fucking expense. All of that shit's done. Groceries, I'm gonna provide the fucking basics until y'all show me some respect. And this is not to all of you guys. I know who talks shit about me, I know who doesn't. But the funny thing is, you guys talk about speaking to somebody, and you don't know that person is dying to get some cookies, some brownie for them. So they come tell me. And y'all gonna talk more shit to another person, and they come tell me because that's their way of getting brownie points. I was always cool with you guys. And I know who all started this. You know, I care about this facility, but I care about you guys.
So, he goes on to basically pity himself and make himself the victim in this situation, which isn't really important to watch. But I can share this full video with the task force if they're interested later. But this is not a video that I took. Nobody that I know took this video. This is a video that was shared on the ethics page. This is Khalid Alane. He is the owner of Dare to Dream, which is since then shut down. And so I want to be especially clear that when money is being offered, freedom is being dangled like a toy. And this is the cycle, and it often continues for years, right? Patients are offered anywhere from 3 to 10K to do detox, and this requires relapse. And unhoused patients are often just offered like food, shelter, and clothes. That's it. Sometimes not even any money. Patients are held from 20 to 30 days in a detox. When let out, they're immediately placed on restriction. Patients are then expected to attend PHP 8 days a week, or 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sorry. No time to run errands, seek resources, any options for like permanent housing and unemployment, education, they're basically non-existent. They will receive probably little to none of the funds that they were promised initially, and they will have wasted all of that time. It's extremely common for insurance companies to cut people to do IOP. Often the insurance company is not going to tell you, no one's going to tell you till you're cut. Then this is when your house manager is going to start to plot on you and encourage your relapse to prolong your benefits. And then the cycle restarts. By this point, you've met at least 50 people in these 30 to 60 days, and you'll have received many offers following your IOP notification to hit detox again to get money. And people, let me just be clear, people think they're going to get this money and they think they're going to get an apartment and they think they're going to escape and they think they're going to go live happily ever after. And they honestly don't really have any other choice because we're not giving them any other choices, right? So like, really quickly, because I want to get to my other parts. Let's Fund the Good programs does not solve this recycling issue. Many of these people are brokered because they came to another program. These survivors remain institutionalized for very many years. We have to expand our definition of who is an expert and who defines success in a program. And also when we emphasize regulatory issues too much, we're reducing human rights violations to general compliance failures, and it limits our opportunity to create innovation in this field and follow the cutting edge research, which follows more of like harm reduction models. So more about good programs, really the good programs. And so I want to ask us, how are we defining good, right? Are we defining that by clean, licensed, and quiet? Because I know places who broker that are all three of those things. They might be clean, they might be licensed, they might be quiet on the block, but they still broker people and they still harm people. So it's really important to understand, like I said earlier, that most of these people who are brokered are coming from a good facility at one point. Half of the problem is this insurance model that we have. Many of them also do things like they overbill, they patient dump, and they get kickbacks. They also rely on that surveillance and heavy control, which causes patients to resort to other options, unfortunately. And I also wanted to point out that many of these places do flat out discriminate against patients who have been treatment resistant in the past. I know that by the time I had tried to go to a quote unquote legitimate treatment center, nobody would take me, nobody would call me back because of the places that I had been before. So this is why I'm asking, why are we trying to retain individuals that have been literally trafficked? The trust is completely broken and time is precious. We can't get it back. The consequences are limited prosecution and more homelessness because we're not really addressing the problem. Like we can say we're going to go after pimps all day long, but if we don't give prostitutes somewhere safe to go, we're never going to get any pimps. It'll just never happen because we need to give what the pimp is giving. Really quick on some limited data. This is a BMC health study. Sobriety has been commodified. It's going to be very hard to uncommodify it. I did a little preliminary study that's specifically focusing on deaths. So here we have some data about where you brought to California and what is your level of education. You can see that no one has a bachelor's degree or higher or even an associate's degree out of the 6 participants. So how many total years, months, and weeks have you been doing sober living in a continuous cycle? So these are some of the answers that I had gotten. And even just this was like a very limited network. This on and off 8 years is very common. 8.5, this person, 2017 to 2024. I'm not a math major, clearly, but that's a pretty long time. How many people have you seen pass away? Next question, right? 15, over 30. This one says, witnessed 3 deaths in my own, heard of many more. 8, 2, and 3. And you can see that when it's correlated to how long they've been in sober living, obviously the longer they're in sober living, the more deaths they're going to witness. This is also some really interesting responses. How have these things shared above affected you personally? Right? This top answer is really important. I'm almost done also, by the way. I know I'm running, I think I'm right on time. I feel no freedom over my own life. I have been clean off drugs and alcohol for years, and I have epilepsy, causing me to have no housing or job and feeling like rehab is the only way or I would be homeless. And so this is like, I know that there is so many political issues at play. And I am aware. I was hoping to go more into certain things and talk about like ways that we could get around certain things maybe in the future. But also this is like a really important aspect of it because these people, a lot of them have no other choice, right? California has made, and this person in the front, in the top, I believe is a California resident. So they are born and raised in California. When we're talking about the second one, this one is talking about getting blood infections, having been in hotels. And this is really important. I was told to keep myself strong in hotel rooms where these marketers would also be high abusing me, bringing in randoms to make sure I didn't leave. A lot of people think that just because a victim goes to a hotel, oh, maybe they have some kind of autonomy. No. 99% of the time, there's somebody that's paying for that hotel. And there's somebody that has stakes in that hotel. The only reason they're paying for that hotel is so that they can traffic you. And then this one, mental breakdown, and it made sobriety impossible, which is also like expected. And I wanted to talk about some of the research barriers, and I'm kind of just reiterating what I said earlier, right? Like, unfortunately, even the best, whatever we're gonna call that, most ethical treatment center would not allow a patient who has been trafficked in treatment to participate in a study if it interfered with their ability to bill the patient for groups. This is why this for-profit model is so harmful, because profit is centered as the priority and it harms patients in more than one way. So after I was sexually assaulted, I was made to do an intake basically the same day. I had to do a rape kit and an intake the exact same day. And then I was expected to attend all of my groups, not skip any groups. What kind of model is that? What kind of research-based model is that? That has nothing to do with research or science. That has to do with profit. Because if we were going off of science, I would be allowed to recover. I would be allowed to rest in that instance. But the way that these places are set up, it's just not possible. So this is talking about leaning into loopholes or closing them. I'm going to skip this for now, and go into some of my recommendations. So like I said, marketing restrictions. Regulate, like many other industries, how these facilities are able to market themselves. And we need harsher penalties for the owners, not addicts. And it's really sad that laws that punish addicts and force them into treatment are actually making this issue worse. And it's unfortunate because I know that model, people do mean that with good intentions, right? They want people to have option to treatment. But what's really unfortunate is that people are targeting those really vulnerable people. And so I would also say that we need to bring more lived experts to the sober living, California Sober Living and Recovery Task Force. I don't know if you guys have talked with Dave Ehrenberg or not. He's actually very controversial in the recovery community, in the body brokering community, because he will go around and he'll say that he cleaned Florida up. And I give him full credit for caring. I very much appreciate him. But at the end of the day, only about less than 5 people were arrested. I wouldn't call that a cleanup. In the documentary that's going to be coming out, there's going to be kind of some evidence that it's very much not cleaned up, but he's a very good person to learn from because he's done some of this stuff before. He's went after these people. I don't know if you guys have spoke with him or not before. And then Teresa Hathaway, I think her name is. She's a Native American senator in Arizona, and she has worked on Native American regulations specifically in protecting those populations. So she would be a really good resource if you wanted to get more information on that. Melissa Ruby, the owner of, or she's the mod, currently the head of It's Time for Ethics and Addiction Treatment. She's been an advocate for many years. She very much does her research. She's very thorough. Anything that she says, she can back up with a transcript of fact, which many people in this industry cannot do. And then Brianna James is also a fellow patient advocate from Florida, New York. And so I'm going to say, I'm almost done, but just a little bit about my model. I'm actually kind of happy to know that you guys are founding a nonprofit. I was thinking about doing something similar. because I think that there are some really huge gaps to be filled. Let me say that. So like if we want to help people that are being brokered, especially this as a recovery task force, there's a deep responsibility to innovate in these recovery spaces. We've been doing the same thing for far too long. And this joke might not land with a bunch of politicians, but these people are really skilled at breaking the law, and they're really skilled at looping the law, and they've outsmarted these things for many years. And so I think that one of the ways to outsmart them is to create new frameworks and give people a way out, because currently people don't really have a way out. So when we're talking about like education and prevention, vulnerable individuals are being brought all over the United States. So one of my ideas is to have national PSAs about how to spot red flag treatment centers. So for example, treatment centers shouldn't be offering to fly you out. They shouldn't be, the list of red flags. And that could be in a pamphlet. I know that Melissa is actually working on making literature like that. And then we can invest in tribal education, like I said earlier. One of the things I would like to do if I had a nonprofit as an Indigenous person, I would hire Indigenous people to do that tribal liaison work, because tribes don't really want to hear anything from certain kinds of people as far as their sovereign nation goes. And you just get better results that way. As far as housing, I really don't think that relying on treatment for housing is sustainable. We need more ways out. And I want to emphasize that like when patients leave patient brokering, we need very specific resources. I remember going to access centers. I remember going to nonprofits. Nobody was really offering the services that I needed. And so that's why I say like I think it's important to prioritize nonprofit models over treatment as housing models and just funding treatment in general, because it's part of the problem. And we can continue by, doing tenants' rights, all of that, access to community. And this is me, if I had a program that got people out of body brokering, this is what it would look like. It would have that integration element, not the isolation, because new research shows that education, employment, and community engagement actually reduce relapse more effectively than things like surveillance, control, and even abstinence. It doesn't work for everyone. So envision pathways towards education and workforce, not just more institutions. And also, one of the ideas I had was to create a scholarship. It's very rare for victims of human trafficking to go back to school and things like that. So that would be really meaningful, a way to give back to the victims. And finally, my last slide, I think it would be really effective for the task force to establish some kind of tip line or hotline. Many victims need more education on where to make reports, and this can serve as a kind of starting point and a kind of like hub for information. And we can also do things like identify trends. So data collected from the hotline will reveal trends around unsafe treatment centers, allowing for streamlined information that can be sent to appropriate organizations and saved seamlessly. We can also gain trust. Right now, there's not a lot of trust. I had a really hard time finding people to fill out that survey. The trust with the government is just not there. I mean, you're also fighting the obstacle that many of these people in their lives as addicts, were targeted by the police. And so, and the government in general, they just have hostile feelings towards government entities. So I think building that trust is really important if we want to have successful prosecutions, we want to pass successful laws, argue with them effectively. Like I said earlier, I think that often when we're talking about the civil rights argument, oh, you can't discriminate against us because we're addicts. We could argue actually that they are violating civil rights a lot of the times because they're not giving these clients adequate housing choices and they're forcing them into these situations. And so a lot of these things can be turned right back onto them if we think about it in the right way and we gain that trust. Like I said, victims currently have absolutely nowhere to go besides the FBI. Carries too much risk. We could also partner with It's Time for Ethics in Addiction Treatment like I said, very reputable. Like anything that she says can be backed up with hard facts. She could be a law enforcement officer, honestly. Somebody needs to give that woman an honorary degree or something because she has so much information. And we can also take control of awareness and education. And if this is the central point for education, um, you're having control over that narrative. And it spreads awareness about patient brokering, the task force, and the tip line kind of all at once. And thank you very much for listening to my very long presentation. I deeply appreciate everyone listening to that. And I would actually really like to know your guys' thoughts on certain things if we have time, especially things like the video and those kinds of things.
Sequoia, thank you so much for sharing on something so deeply personal and helping expose the many examples of the egregious and certainly predatory practices in this profit-driven industry. It's great to see you thriving and equally fantastic to see you dedicating yourself as we are to fighting for patient protections. I know we have to move on. I want to ask one follow-up question because I know it's of interest to some of our participants today about the ties to the homeless issue. You touched on it a few times anecdotally. Can you just expand briefly on your experience on how that's translating to more people living on our streets?
So that's a really good question. So a couple of ways. So people are being brought to California in these big, massive like dumps, I guess, right? Like 10, 15 people at once being brought, sometimes every day, multiple times a day. And these people are being brought sometimes without identification, sometimes without insurance, just not like a lot of the proper things that they need to succeed. And unfortunately, these treatment centers have no incentive. And maybe that's something that could be solved with regulation as well, like forcing them to provide these kind of resources. But unfortunately, they don't, and they will bill people until the last possible day, and then they do what we call patient dumping, where they will drop people off at hospitals, Skid Row, other treatment centers, sometimes that they have affiliates with, so that they can get payment off of them even after they leave. And I want to also stress that this causes a lot of distrust between people who suffer from mental health and addiction issues and institutions. You start to believe that institutions are there to hurt you, not help you. Paranoia becomes worse. I know that working with the unhoused population in my volunteering and stuff, like paranoia is a really serious issue. And it stems from PTSD, like chronic PTSD of like these people being traumatized over and over again in their lives. And then they stay on the street because as backwards as that sounds to us, that is safer than going into some of these institutions or shelters. And then also another problem is that people's insurance sometimes gets completely burned out, what we call burned, and they're not able to bill it anymore. And this is causing people to either be forced to get fraudulent insurance policies, or it's causing people to just stop treatment altogether and become homeless.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you, Sequoia, and we will stay in touch and get feedback. I'm sure we can gather that, and I appreciate all the great ideas that you provided as well. You really put a lot of thought into that. Can see that. So thank you, and appreciate you being here. And you're welcome to. I'm assuming you'll listen to the rest of this. Because we have some good things that we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much, and I hope to contribute more.
We're glad you're here.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so next I'd like to follow up on what Chris shared with the group as we look ahead together at for what's next with the task force and how we can drive real change. So since forming this task force, we are now in our second legislative cycle. And the first year included the introduction of a few bills with really the traction was really proved to be difficult with that. So this year, with the help of the DHCS audit providing some justification and some backdrop for the bills, we've seen a cascade of reform measures that were introduced, and it remains to be seen how it's all going to pan out. So, but even if every proposed reform was passed, it would not solve all the problems and all the challenges that we are seeing in the system. So I'd like to open up the dialogue for a brief group conversation on potential strategic initiatives. And this goes to what Chris mentioned earlier for the task force to consider, especially as we set an annual budget. So some top issues could be continued legislative advocacy at the state level with adjusted strategy based on the results of the current proposals, expanding the task force membership to other regions, which we are trying, but be more of an effort. This will help nullify the impression that Sacramento has reflected as reflected by the Senate Health Committee Chair's statements, thinking this is just an Orange County issue. But this is only going to happen if the elected officials on this task force assist directly with the recruiting. So there's a lot of elected officials sitting around the room, and also there's people attending online. So another thing is increasing model local ordinance adoption. With the favorable Ninth Circuit decision on the Ohio case, other cities can now move forward with the lower risk of the litigation. This is what scared all of us on the cities adopting all this, is because we were very concerned about the expensive litigation that was coming at, Newport Beach, Costa Mesa suffered, and I think even Fountain Valley did. No, you didn't, thank goodness. Okay. But the point is there was a significant amount of litigation that's gone on. So while some cities have followed suit, the task force can do more to encourage really the other jurisdictions in adopting this. I want to give a shout out just right here. An example of a city that adopted this is Laguna Woods, who, by the way, does not have a sober living housing problem, but they felt so strongly that this would help the rest of the cities that they went ahead and adopted the ordinance proactively before they have a problem. So I just want to give a shout out to that great group of council members. And then finally, another idea is the commissioning of a study or a public survey to further justify the need and or demand for various reforms, similar to how the original DHCS audit was conducted. And that was alluded to in the comments that we heard from our speaker too, with some of these things. So let's open it up. I want to just spend about 10 minutes with some dialogue. And I know that I did get some information. Yes, there it is.
Yeah, we put together a sheet that'll help. I
So-
pass it
Yeah,
around.
Laura, no, Brent gave me a heads up on that lady.
Yeah, I'd like a copy of
All right.
that.
Okay, so we have thoughts on potential CASLR legislation strategy, it's specifically, and that is from the Advocates for Responsible Treatment. It's a 1.5 pager that's being passed around. I'm sure we can you keep this as part of the materials that we have, but we thank you for doing this. And they basically, I'll just summarize, unless somebody else was going to summarize. I'm leaving that open. Did you want to summarize, or how do you want to?
Well, what we try to do is make this a bullet point, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Pass these around. But I think it needs to start with there's no one solution.
Right.
And the thing is, unless we make it for the people in recovery,
Yes.
we lose. Trying to focus, we saw that as the response from the the gal in the health committee.
Yes.
If we focus on the cities, we're going to lose. So
I agree.
And that does need to be about the people in recovery. They're the ones that are taking the abuse.
100%.
And another major thing is we need to make this more than Orange County. We've been fighting, as Lori and I have been fighting this for 10 years, and it's always been us. Not by us, I mean Orange County. We spent we visited with 40 offices in the fall, started last fall, trying to get this through. our experience was about 90% of the people we talked to had no idea what we were talking about. And the staff turnover is high. There's probably once a year, there's new people. So if we're gonna do this, it needs to be done starting in September of this year, soon. And we need to get out and, first of all, educate them on the problem and make this more than Orange County.
Yes, agreed.
And so those are the key things, I
Yeah.
think that, and if we do those things, I think that'd be a great place to start. And we tried to tick through a list there. I don't know if you want to go through over the whole thing, but, and I've got it, if you want to put it on, I've got it on a flash drive
Please.
if you want to put it out for other people. But,
I think that would be great. Would you like to give it to one of the gentlemen? Yeah, any one of the people sitting
Flash
along
drive.
here. We'll take it. Thank you so much.
I don't know if that helps, but
It helps. Thank you. You came with ideas and you were prepared. That always helps. Thank you.
Madam
Okay,
Chair.
yes.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to acknowledge, we do have a guest joining us from Sacramento, Marty Wilson.
Great.
Most recently was the Executive Vice President of Public Affairs for the Cal Chamber. He's now the California Principal for ACTS Advocacy. So we've been talking with him, and I know the city of Newport Beach has as well, just about some of our future legislative strategies, as well as some of the things that we're talking about here. So we appreciate that he's engaged here. He's a advisor to a number of prior governors here in the state.
That's great.
So Marty, thanks.
Marty, thank you for coming. Do you want to say anything? Okay.
He's still on.
Well,
Right. Sorry, I've been on mute, but no, it's a fascinating topic, and hopefully we can find a way to be helpful. We're doing great work, and we'll keep up the fight.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad somebody from Sacramento's here. Appreciate that. Okay, anybody around the room, any ideas, focuses, etc.? I mean, are the things that I mentioned in align with what, because these are some of the things we've heard around the table for the past several months, are those core areas.
The thing that rises at the top of the list for me, I think you make an excellent point as far as membership growth and trying to get our message out to other cities and counties. The thing that really, however, I'm sort of focusing on is local ordinance adoption report. So we all have in our individual cities, Wendy, you mentioned that the city's reluctance in general to get involved on a legislative position because of the potential for lawsuits.
Yeah.
So I think that if, as a county, and I believe I'm focused more on Orange County. I think we're sort of the epicenter of this disaster that's going on. And I would like to really look at that local ordinance adoption report and to take it maybe even to the next level. So we as a group understand where other cities are in their adoption process. And then also, I think it could be a focus of our group to go out to those cities, to those city managers, especially because, as we all know, as council members, it's the city manager that really moves your agenda forward.
Sure.
And I think it would be an important direction to go. Their city managers have, local city managers have meetings quarterly. I think it'd be really important to go out to the city managers and start pushing legislation that we feel comfortable at the city level of adopting.
Okay, good. And that's something that we could look at, is getting in on the city manager meeting and doing a brief presentation.
Yeah, OCCMA is a good way to do that.
Yes.
They meet monthly with luncheon. And then I spoke with Jeff, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yeah, sure.
Before the meeting started, about preparing a presentation before the councils of government, OCOG, and then taking that to others around the region and around the state. Western Riverside COG, San Bernardino, LA has multiples, gateway cities, and San Gabriel, LA, et cetera. So you can hit a lot of cities and city staff in one location by going to the COGs.
I wonder if we could do something through SCAG.
Or SCAG directly, and hitting them all at once. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me talk to, that's a great idea. And I could talk to our ledge. We have a ledge meeting coming up at SCAG. And that could be, and then the league, of course, we've got great support in the league. Statewide, actually. So that's a great thought, to focus on city managers and really kind of bringing awareness of what we do, the ordinance, and then the legislation, or the types of things that are our priority, our platform, if you will. That's good. Thank you. Anybody else? You don't have to.
I'll just reference back to some of what Sequoia talked about in her presentation. I think her data set was obviously really small, but if we could, as Strategic Ventures has identified, get a much larger sample set, that could be very meaningful data to work with to illustrate, once again, what we understand is happening anecdotally, but to be able to present that in a way that will help us with the rest of our work here.
So that kind of tags onto our fourth bullet point of kind of commissioning a study or survey and gathering data.
But we have some refined suggestions on that we're developing as we look at presenting a budget to the board. And it's definitely central to that next phase of data that you're looking for.
And a lot of data has to come from law enforcement, and that's an ever evolving process because of the way that things are reported and different ways that the sheriff's department, the Irvine Police Department, the Newport Beach, that everybody's collecting data, and it's not always the same, but they're working on some processes, I know, at the county to see if they can at least gather some of that.
And the district attorney's office investigations into the insurance frauds.
Yes.
And on the county level, it's also the EMS data, and that may be something that we could capture as an initiative through the California State Association of Counties and CSAC.
Okay.
Just to share some of my experience, that we had a murder actually happened last year because of sober living, and that's what brought that to my attention, to even know that there's any in our city in Irvine. And that's what got me on the task force and started looking into the matter. So during our discussion about this, it was actually brought up that some of the places get a lot of calls, like what PDs or emergency calls. Again, like data collection, and then if we can compile the whole thing together countywide and show that, or even to get it to convince the other counties that that might be an issue for them, that even if there's nothing like a murder, then we can at least get calls at a specific house, how many times they get that, and before it becomes a more serious issue, so other counties will be convinced that they need to do something before something serious happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be another way to bring this outside of Orange County.
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
And then just one note, Madam Chair, the ordinance status report, as we started updating that, we did identify about a half a dozen other jurisdictions outside of Orange County that are considering or have adopted the ordinances. And I just wanted to point out San Jose is considering, Encinitas is considering, Redlands has adopted, and also San Luis Obispo County is in the process of considering. So we're tracking those. And just
That's great.
identify those. We've also had some follow-up discussions with towns and public affairs, as they represent a lot of cities around the state. So we've been reaching out to a lot of cities, obviously where it is, finding the cities really represent where maybe the cities have not really implemented this because it's not as big a problem, but Townsend is helping us kind of make the argument on the legislative side about why cities need to band together. So.
Well, and I think it's fair to say that when we're sitting on the city council and there's one person that has come in that says, I've got this neighbor and they're doing X, Y, and Z, and not a lot of people come to the council. So to be honest, in the beginning, we don't know the extent of the problem, because and oftentimes we're like, well, that's a state issue. There's nothing we can do about it. That is something that was stated for probably, many years. I would say probably a decade. So that's probably happening in all these other cities. And so the more we can raise awareness to say there's a resource, there is actually something you can do, I think that I think that automatically will increase participation in adoption of these ordinances. Okay, anybody else?
Is there any,
I just say, can you speak up because some of the people online are having trouble hearing
oh, okay.
everyone except Wendy, so.
I know, and my kids can hear me a mile away.
Is there any opportunity to cooperate with the other side to develop some, I guess, regulations that we all can live with instead of, it's kind of us against them? Is there an opportunity?
So I think
No.
we have, oh, somebody online?
Yeah,
Nope. Go ahead, Lori. I know there's some good providers out there.
Yeah, there aren't a lot. And Advocates for Responsible Treatment has seen what their lobbyists do in Sacramento, and their lobbyists are intent on subverting any change that makes any substantial difference. There's an illusion in Sacramento that you can work with these people and they will somehow come around. But the reality is that every best bill, every best regulation, they will largely attempt to defeat. And so working with them is only going to create even more delay. We're talking about 10 years of working on this issue and 10 years of history of the types of bills they propose and the types of, actually, I'll say, amendments they try to slide in on top of legislators' bills that subvert the purpose of the bill. This is not an industry you want to waste any time trying to talk to them about it. You want to regulate them in a way that enables the people in these situations to be protected. And in fact, if there were any industry that would suggest that the vulnerable consumer needs to be protected from the operator, this is the example industry of it.
The inverse of that is, though, there are other than, quote, the industry, the for-profit industry, there are other groups of sober living providers that we should team with because they're on the same side with us. And if we can band with them, especially in the Bay Area, there's some strong groups, and that would get us a wider footprint. And it would also get us to where we're not NIMBYs, where it isn't just Orange County. And we're looking at more than just picking on the poor for-profit sober living homes. If you stand back, the definition, part of this is a definitional problem. We talk about sober living homes. There's no such thing as a sober living home. What there is a broad spectrum of living arrangements for people with addiction problems. So what we need to do is find ways to put those in specific buckets, make those buckets as narrow as we can, and then we can go pick off the bad guys. And in the meantime, we can help the good guys. There are a lot of people who are spending their lives trying to help addicts. They are not in the for-profit industry.
Yeah.
Trust us.
Yeah.
We've met those people. Every one of those, if they were in this for the good of the people, they wouldn't be ripping them off in the first place. So, I'll get off my soapbox.
Thank you. So that gives you kind of somewhat of an answer. Anybody else? I see a new person.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I live next door, I think. The situation has been going on for several years where I've been harassed and intimidated, been told to move from my home, and it's just ongoing. It's affecting my health. And I just kind of figured out that's probably what's going on. I've spoken to someone from my city, and they said, well, because I don't know what's going on. And so with that, I can't find a way to resolve it.
What city are you in, if you don't mind me asking? If you're not comfortable, it's fine.
I'll because it's
okay.
Trying to upgrade my security system.
No, it's okay.
They're coming to my home, banging on my house, using their barking dogs to affect my health. The HOA won't do anything, city won't do anything. It's one of the cities here that says that they're not adopting ordinance currently. And I've talked to them about adding new ordinances, and I haven't gotten anywhere. I spoke to someone in the Animal Services Organization in Mission Viejo, and you know, so, and you know, I've been told to talk to the sheriffs. I've had sheriffs come out multiple times. I have recordings. No one wants to look at it. And the sheriff doesn't know. Apparently, some of these homes are registered, and I think some of them are not.
Many are not.
And so that's the issue. Because I don't know, you know, all this time, I didn't know that was the issue. Even though I know there were some mental issues at that home with different people, you know, family members living there. And so I just found this out about a couple hours ago, and so I said I'd come here to see what's going on, and perhaps if you want an actual resident that's living on the bad side of this situation, you know, I would like to, you know, participate or
Yes.
lend.
We do want that, and we have lots of people that are in your situation that have been at these meetings.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, yes, because you know, some of them I don't know how, if I file a restraining order, I don't know their name. The owner won't do a whole lot. My HOA won't tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with people trying to make themselves better. I think we all
course.
kind of do that. But when it comes to the point where the surrounding neighbors are affected by what they're doing and saying and those sort of things, that's where it becomes an issue that I want to help resolve.
Well, maybe we can talk a little bit after, okay?
That would be great. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. We welcome people that are in your situation at this meeting.
And Marlene, don't make any misunderstanding. The reason we're in this room right now is because of you,
That's right.
because of our
I'm
constituents.
glad I found you guys.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that we're here. And because without citizens like yourself that have been victimized by this process, and are truly emotional and engaged in trying to come up with solutions, is the reason that brought us all together. So really appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Glad to have found you. Thank you.
All right, I think that is, I think that we've got some ideas that have come out of this. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Madam Chair, can
Yes.
I'm awfully gabby today. I
Okay,
apologize.
I feel you. Go ahead.
But just to sort of add to the issue as far as local ordinance and the city managers trying to get them more engaged. The other automatic thing that we all understand as electeds is that the legal issues, the complications, the challenges of getting their city involved in litigation is very, very difficult in a city manager's position. So again, just to ask if we're able to get more involved with trying to get city managers, I think that's one of the topics that's most important to cover, to try to get them their understanding, because right now managers are risk adverse, and that's what we all want them to be. But we need to overcome that challenge from a city manager perspective, because that way to bring them comfort, that will allow them to bring that comfort to the council at the council level. So that just another thought. So thank
That
you.
will be something we can emphasize and talk about it at that city manager presentation that we potentially will do.
I was wondering, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I've had my hand up for a while before you close. Can you keep the discussion open for like a couple another minute or two?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. My name's Steve McNally. I'm on a behavioral health advisory board. They're legislated across the state with welfare and institution code responsibilities. So every county has one. They're not particularly on any of the copy lists for Department of Healthcare Services. So the 59 electeds that are connected to those boards that are the local county, which is Sarmiento, and it has been Supervisor Foley in the past for a short time. So they don't see these issues. So my question was a couple, and I'm speaking as an individual, some with schizophrenia. One is I had sent in the private chat, because the chat's broken, is SB 1288 that was done in 2018 and chaptered by the governor. I don't know if there's any connection to future bills, but since that passed across the Senate and the Assembly, you might find people that would be alliances. And the gentleman, I'm not sure who he was, but he was speaking about reaching out to the addiction community. I'm not sure if we've really done that, but doctors, lawyers, judges, and get people that are connected to help, and also separating treatment facilities from sober living, and then finding cross ownership between sober living and treatment providers, which might be hard to do because of LLCs, and a list of all the lawsuits across the state. Several have finally been brought in Orange County against a couple of people. But talking to people in the addiction industry, it took forever for anybody to get those going. And the deep pockets of Wall Street money buying bigger treatment groups because of the cash cow. And then also Department of Healthcare Services are sitting back, and they don't really, except for the treatment part. But what about the Department of Managed Healthcare and all the fraud, and why these big insurance companies have allowed all this fraud to happen? And also, I didn't know about Smiley. Thank you for your story. If any of this has touched the Medi-Cal rolls. So is brokering just a private insurance thing, or is it also being done in Medi-Cal, which would mean that the county implemented programs are also affected, paid for, like CalOptima would pay for, it's called ODS Medi-Cal, substance use treatment facility services for the county. So anyway, those are just some thoughts, is to reach out. And also LA, Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino shares one broadcast market. So if you've had a good ability to get in the newspaper, the people who own the Register also own all the other papers in Southern California, with the exception of the LA Times, if you call that a group anymore. And those four counties share one broadcast market, TV and radio, and they're 45% of California for everybody. Private hospitals, legislators, electeds. So if you could get them to organize those a block, it could be a very powerful thing. So anyway, thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate your input. Is there anybody else online that wanted to say something? Because I can't see the screen.
Susan Ray wanted to.
Okay.
Susan wanted to say something.
Susan, if you could, we're gonna wrap this up in just a few minutes, so go ahead, Susan.
Sure, I'm pretty quick. I was just reading some of the ABs and wanted to give some feedback because, as you may be familiar, my son died due to negligence of a rehab, and the DHCS did a horrible investigation. I did ask for public records. They never got them to me, but they did get them to Jennifer Turner Barton, strangely enough, who at the time I didn't even know, or and who was advocating for the situation, but to be resolved. But also there was police video that they never investigated. So all they did was question the two people who sent him to his death. And right now, one of them is being noted as brokering in Kensington, Pennsylvania, I believe. So again, talking about the brokers and then talking about the situation, it would be great to see our AB, what was it? Pass, but I don't like the word if. Their investigation has no results. I would like to see possibly some county involvement as a backup to do an additional investigation to some of these. Back in the day, Department of Social Services had ombudsmen that were county that would check board and care facilities and things of that nature. And they were excellent. So that's just my comment, my suggestion towards a solution. And I thank you for the time today.
Thank you so much. So, can we look into that, the county board and care?
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I just asked if we can look into the, county board, and the investigation of, you mentioned the board that used to.
The ombudsman were board,
Ombudsman.
they oversaw the board and care facilities. I knew that because my mother owned one, and they would come by every 2 months and inspect the facility, etc. And fortunately, they never found an infraction with us. So that means that we were safe. I mean, they checked everything: refrigerators, electricity, plumbing, door locks, everything, and talked to the clients, the residents. So it was just really good when we're talking about vulnerable people. So thank you again.
That's good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Look into that's a great suggestion.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your input. Okay. I just want to say if there's any important updates to share with the group regarding the status of current proposed legislation, how we can help. Anybody have any updates as far? Yeah. Thank you. League of Cities. I gave it up. I saw a news flash earlier, so give us what you have.
Yeah, no, we're seeing as we're over time. I'll just pass it to Caroline really quick for a brief update.
Caroline.
She's online.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm excited to be here, and we just want to give a huge shout out to Wendy for coming to our Community Services Policy Committee earlier this month to talk about the work of this group and encourage more folks to get involved. I think that was a really great opportunity to get in front of a lot of people and talk about the importance of this issue. So thank you for doing that. No major updates right now. We're in a pretty good spot. We have one of our bills, AB 424 Davies, is waiting for a hearing in the Appropriations Committee. It passed out on consent out of Health this week, which is fantastic news. Another one of our bills that we kind of mentioned in the chat, AB 492, the bill that got pulled by the chair off consent and heard in the Senate Health Committee, did pass out of that committee 6-0. So no votes on that, which was fantastic considering the chair did not recommend a position on that bill or a vote recommendation on that bill. That bill, they decided does not have a huge fiscal impact, and so it's headed straight to the Senate floor. So that's hopefully a nice quick path to the Senate, and then from there to the governor's desk. SB 35 by Senator Umberg is awaiting a hearing in the Health Committee. That'll have to happen before the July recess on July 18th. So looking forward to getting set and having that hearing here in the next 2 weeks. And then SB 329, our bill with Senator Blakespear, also headed to the Appropriations Committee on the Assembly side, and look forward to that hopefully passing out of Appropriations and then headed to the floor. So everything is still plugging along, and we look forward to reporting out next time at even more progress and getting closer to the governor's desk. Hope that covers it. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'll just add after that, we had a really successful press conference a couple weeks ago that Chair Bucknam, we're very happy that you could speak on behalf of Caslar at that meeting and on behalf of city officials, Santa Ana Mayor Valeria Mesqua, Senator Catherine Blakespear, and Assembly Member Lori Davies also spoke at that, and Sequoia spoke at that. Thank you, Sequoia, if you're still on. And we appreciate a really great turnout from our local officials, Co-Chair Kleiman, Councilmember Liu. Thank you for being there. Our cities, our biggest cities, Anaheim, Irvine, Santa Ana were there. Our smallest cities, Villa Park, La Palma were there. North, south, east, west, we're representing the whole gamut, and making sure that our local officials are emphasizing to the media how important this issue is. So thank you all for coming, and I'll pass it back over to you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to keep moving this along. I just want to say thanks for reminding me that meeting that I attended for the league had representatives from across the
whole state. Yeah, staff
so
and elected.
We're trying. We're trying. So.
And you gave out the website, and I got a few people that signed up for alerts. So bravo, keep doing that. Everyone
That's what we're doing.
SoberLivingTaskForce.com.
We'll keep it. Yes.
I just want to add, so we're tracking all these bills sort of on the proactive side of the ledger. As important I think is the reactivity to things that we saw and you heard from Lori Durant earlier about some of the things that the industry representatives are putting out there. So I want to report that we had a big win in tabling, at least for the time being, or killing, if you want to use a stronger word, SB 43, which did legitimize or had the potential to legitimize patient brokering. So, kudos to us.
Yes,
Like,
kudos.
take the wins where we can get them,
Yes.
even if that's the only win that we have this session, which I don't think it will be. It's a big one.
A good one. Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm gonna move along, and so I just want to conclude and give you some, we will once again task each of you with a voluntary homework assignment, and that is to reach out and bring somebody from another city. We all have somebody from another city, and outside of Orange County would be great. We sit on regional boards, we can do it. Okay, because that's where our task force is having success, and I want to keep it going because we have a collective voice that we want to continue to build on. So whether you're elected official, a jurisdiction, or a resident online or here, please join us at our, we just ask that you bring somebody. You can even bring a resident to join us at our next task force meeting. When you have that resident that comes to your city and doesn't know where to go, this is a great place for them to join us here. So our expansion is vital to maintaining momentum and ensuring our success in the legislature, especially as we approach 2026 legislative session and really refine our strategies. We want to keep the momentum going. We are not stopping. We're continuing. So with that, today's meeting is over, and please feel free to stay and connect with colleagues. I know we went way over, but we had a great presentation. Usually these are about 1 hour. Don't let this one scare you away. We appreciate everybody coming, and we will see you next time. Our next meeting is in the tentatively. We'll see.
We'll send out a notice.
Because I know a lot of people, it maybe isn't a great time in the summer, so let's see what we can do. Oh, well, we should meet because we want to set up for September, so let's see what we can do.
That's correct. Anything that's going to the governor's desk. But before that, our next meeting, those who are online, please make sure you sign up and encourage others. Ask your city managers to sign up at soberlivingtaskforce.com. We are sending out periodic bill alerts to collect letters from around the state, and we delivered over 100 letters to the portal for various bills. A lot of them have come from Orange County, but we've picked up a number of letters from other counties and cities outside of this area.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay, everybody. Thank you. I have about 5 minutes. I'd love to speak with you. Are we good? We have to set up our board meeting.
Yes.
Thanks, Lauren.
Sorry, Patrick.
No.